Introduction: Why this wisdom still matters. We are living in an era defined by a frantic, often invisible, arms race against time. We wake up with the weight of 1,000 expectations pressing against our chests, convinced that if we do not lean hard into the steering wheel of life, everything will drift off course. We equate effort with worth, and control with safety. We believe that if we can just worry enough, plan enough, and force enough, we can secure a predictable future. Yet, look around. Despite our frantic pacing, our obsession with optimization, and our digital connectivity, a quiet, pervasive exhaustion has settled into the collective marrow of our culture. We are tired, not just physically, but existentially. We are trying to hold up the sky, unaware that the sky has no need for our hands. There is a fundamental misunderstanding at the heart of our modern struggle: we have confused intention with coercion. We believe that to make things happen, we must wrestle them into existence. We treat life like an adversary to be conquered rather than a landscape to be navigated. But what if the most powerful version of yourself is not the one who is gripping the wheel until your knuckles turn white, but the one who understands how to calibrate the engine and trust the road? This book is an invitation to a radical shift in perspective. It is about the art of surrender. Not as a retreat, not as an act of weakness, and certainly not as the abandonment of your goals. True surrender is the highest form of mastery. It is the ability to align your internal state with the unfolding nature of reality, allowing you to move through life with a sense of flow that looks like magic to the uninitiated, but is actually the result of profound psychological and spiritual alignment. In the chapters that follow, we will dismantle the myth of the struggling achiever. We will explore why your insistence on controlling every variable is the very thing preventing you from reaching your true potential. We will look at how your nervous system is wired to perceive change as a threat, and how you can retrain that biology to embrace the unknown as a playground of opportunity. We will move past the superficial advice of positive thinking and delve into the mechanics of belief, emotional regulation, and the architecture of your subconscious mind. Why does this matter now? Because we have never been more distracted, and yet we have never had more access to the tools of inner mastery. If you continue to use your energy to fight against the tide, you will eventually burn out, not because you lack ambition, but because you are operating against the grain of how the universe actually functions. This book is designed to help you reclaim your power. By learning to release the parts of the process you cannot control, you suddenly find an abundance of energy to invest in the parts you can. You are about to embark on a journey that will challenge your deepest assumptions about how progress is made. You will learn that the surrender we are discussing is actually a dynamic, active state. It is a partnership between your deliberate intention and the spontaneous wisdom of life itself. When you stop treating life as a problem to be solved and start treating it as a dance to be joined, the heavy burden of trying is replaced by the effortless grace of being. This is not a collection of temporary fixes. This is a framework for a new way of living. We will peel back the layers of your conditioning, the fears that keep you small, the habits that keep you stuck, and the ego-driven narratives that convince you that you are alone in your struggles. We will replace them with a robust, grounded, and deeply effective philosophy of life that works in the boardroom, in your home, and in the deepest recesses of your own heart. As we move forward, I want you to keep an open mind. Some of what you read may feel counterintuitive. Some of it may contradict everything you have been told about the grind of success. That is the point. You are already an expert at doing things the hard way, that has brought you to this page. Now, it is time to discover what happens when you stop pushing against the current and learn how to navigate the waters of your own existence with wisdom, power, and, most importantly, peace. The transition from a life of force to a life of flow is not an overnight event, it is a profound metamorphosis. It begins with a single realization: you do not need to lose your power to find your peace. In fact, you cannot truly have one without the other. You are ready. Let us begin the work of coming home to yourself. Chapter Summary. The myth of control. Our culture falsely equates constant struggle and tight control with success, leading to exhaustion and burnout. Surrender versus passivity. True surrender is not giving up, it is the strategic, active alignment of your intentions with the reality of how life unfolds. The cost of force. Trying to control every variable causes us to operate against the grain, wasting energy and blocking our true potential. Mastery through flow. By releasing the need for total control, you reclaim energy to invest in meaningful action. The purpose of this book, to provide a transformative framework that bridges the gap between psychological science, spiritual wisdom, and practical, modern-day success. An invitation to change. This journey will challenge long-held beliefs, helping you move from the grind of life to a more graceful, effective. Chapter 1, The Hidden Problem Most People Never See. Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to fall asleep, the more elusive rest becomes? You lie in the dark, checking the clock, calculating how many hours of sleep you will lose, and mentally forcing yourself to relax. The more you demand sleep to arrive, the more your brain hums with agitated energy. Sleep, like so many of life's greatest gifts, cannot be commanded, it can only be invited. This is a profound, albeit frustrating, truth about human experience. The moment we attempt to force an outcome, we often create the very resistance that prevents it from manifesting. This phenomenon is not limited to your nighttime routine. It is a subtle, invisible virus that infects our relationships, our career ambitions, and our personal growth. We call this the hidden problem. It is the unconscious belief that force equals effectiveness. We have been conditioned to believe that life is a series of obstacles to be dismantled through sheer willpower. If you want a promotion, you out-hustle your colleagues. If you want a better relationship, you point out your partner's flaws until they fix them. If you want inner peace, you force your mind to stop worrying, often becoming anxious about the fact that you are feeling anxious. This is the mechanism of force, and it is the primary reason so many high-achieving, intelligent people feel like they are running on a treadmill that never stops moving. At the psychological level, this problem stems from a misunderstanding of how the human nervous system interacts with the environment. When you approach a goal with a force mindset, your brain enters a state of high alert. You are constantly scanning for threats, calculating risks, and looking for what is wrong. While this level of hypervigilance was essential for our ancestors to avoid predators, it is disastrous for modern innovation, creativity, and connection. When you are in force mode, your brain shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for nuanced decision-making, empathy, and long-term vision, and redirects blood flow to the amygdala, the survival center. You are literally functioning at a lower cognitive capacity because you are treating your own life like a battlefield. Consider the entrepreneur who is so terrified of failing that every business decision is made out of desperation rather than inspiration. They micromanage every employee, obsess over minute details, and ignore the broader market trends because their vision is narrowed by fear. Their insistence on controlling every outcome becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of stress and inefficiency. They are so busy pushing the boulder up the hill that they fail to see they are pushing it in the wrong direction. The hidden problem is that we mistake the tension of trying for the progress of doing. We feel better when we are stressed because stress feels like work. We equate internal agitation with productivity. If we are not worried, we feel like we aren't doing enough. This is a dangerous trap. It confuses the expenditure of energy with the achievement of results. To see this problem clearly, you must look at your own history of trying. Think of a time you were desperate for a specific outcome, a specific job, a specific person to like you, or a specific financial goal. Do you remember the feeling? It was likely tight, constricted, and heavy. Now, compare that to a time when you were in a state of flow, when you were passionate, clear, and relaxed. You were likely twice as effective with half the effort. The difference was not in the work. It was in the presence or absence of the internal force. When we operate from a place of force, we are fundamentally signaling to ourselves and the world that we do not believe the outcome will happen naturally. We are operating from a foundation of lack. We act as if the world is a stingy place that will only yield its treasures if we bully it into submission. This creates a feedback loop. We push, we get stressed, our results are mediocre, we blame ourselves for not pushing hard enough, and we push even harder. The alternative is to move from a state of trying to a state of allowing. This does not mean you stop setting goals. It means you stop tethering your emotional well-being to the immediate satisfaction of those goals. It means you understand that your role is to prepare the soil, plant the seed, and provide the water, but you cannot force the plant to grow. You can control your actions, your mindset, and your discipline, but you cannot control the exact timing or the specific way in which the result appears. Most people never see this because they are too busy with the next task. They assume that if they just reach the next level, the struggle will end. But the struggle is not in the circumstance, it is in the approach. If you carry the energy of force into your next success, it will not bring you the peace you desire. It will only bring you a more expensive, more stressful version of the same exhaustion. The first step toward true personal mastery is the courage to stop trying in the way you have always done. It is the willingness to look at the areas of your life where you are forcing, gripping, and pushing, and to ask yourself, what am I afraid would happen if I simply showed up, did my best work, and trusted the process? This is the beginning of the end of your struggle. Once you recognize the hidden problem, you are no longer a victim of your own frantic energy. You gain the ability to choose a different way. You stop being the person who is fighting the current and start being the person who knows how to swim. Chapter Summary. The paradox of force: the more we try to force an outcome, the more resistance we create. The definition of the hidden problem: we mistake trying, tension and worry, for doing, action and productivity. Biological impact. Constant forcing keeps our brains in a survival-based, high-alert state, which hinders creativity and high-level problem-solving. The lack mindset: forcing stems from an underlying belief that we must bully the world to get what we want, leading to a cycle of burnout. The shift to allowing true success comes from balancing deliberate, high-quality action with an internal state of trust and surrender. The path forward. Recognizing your own tendency to force is the prerequisite for Chapter 2, The Invisible Laws That Shape Reality. If you were to look at a seed resting in the palm of your hand, you would see a small, dry, and unassuming object. It has no visible mechanical parts, no engine, and no map. Yet, if you place it into the earth, a series of invisible laws immediately go to work. Gravity pulls the roots downward to anchor the structure, photosynthesis begins to draw energy from the sun. Moisture and minerals initiate a complex chemical transformation that breaks the shell and pushes a green shoot toward the sky. The seed does not try to grow. It does not worry if it is behind schedule. It simply surrenders to the laws of its own nature, and the reality of a plant emerges. Human beings, however, act as if we are exempt from these laws. We believe that we are the sole architects of our destiny, separate from the environment, and that life is a chaotic sequence of events that we must constantly manage to keep from collapsing. But the truth is that your life is also governed by invisible laws, principles of resonance, rhythm, and cause and effect that operate with the same unwavering precision as the laws of botany or physics. The primary invisible law is the law of correspondence, which suggests that your external world is a direct reflection of your internal state. We are conditioned to look at the world out there, your bank account, your partner's behavior, the state of your career, and believe these are the primary realities. We treat these external conditions as the truth, and we allow them to dictate our inner reality. We think, I will feel secure when I have more money, or I will be happy when my spouse finally understands me. This is a reversal of the fundamental law. You are not a victim of your circumstances, you are the epicenter of them. When you attempt to change your life by only moving pieces around on the external chessboard, you are essentially trying to change your reflection in a mirror by wiping the glass rather than changing your expression. The reflection will never change until you do. When you hold a belief of scarcity, your nervous system is primed to notice every signal of lack in your environment. If you believe you are unworthy of success, you will subconsciously sabotage opportunities or dismiss them as too good to be true. You are not just observing your reality, you are participating in its construction every second of every day. This isn't mysticism, it is cognitive science. Your reticular activating system (RAS). The filter in your brain that determines what you pay attention to, constantly scans the world to confirm your existing beliefs. If you believe the world is a cold, competitive place, your brain will show you evidence of coldness and competition everywhere you look. However, once you understand that you are shaping this feedback loop, you gain the power to intervene. You begin to understand that letting life happen is not passive surrender to bad circumstances. It is an active, intentional alignment with the potential you wish to realize. Another invisible law is the law of rhythm. Everything in life moves in cycles. There is a time to sow and a time to reap, a time to exert energy and a time to retreat. Our modern culture demands a linear, relentless output. We want the harvest all year round. We ignore the necessary period of winter, the time for rest, introspection, and preparation, and then wonder why we feel depleted. When you understand the law of rhythm, you stop panicking when things go quiet. You realize that silence is not the end, it is the incubation period for your next expansion. When you fight these rhythms, you create internal friction. You suffer because you are trying to force a summer outcome during your winter season. You push for a decision when the situation requires patience, you isolate yourself when the situation requires connection. By aligning yourself with these natural flows, you become in sync with the trajectory of your own life. You start to see that when one door closes, the timing is actually working in your favor, even if the ego finds it painful in the moment. The most difficult part of working with these invisible laws is the requirement of faith. You cannot see the law of gravity working on a single molecule, but you trust it enough to step out of bed every morning. You must develop the same trust for the unseen forces governing your personal evolution. You do not need to know the how of the future. You only need to align the who of your present. When you align your internal frequency, your thoughts, your emotions, and your beliefs, with the vision you hold, you stop pushing against reality and start dancing with it. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this situation teaching me about the frequency I am currently emitting? This perspective shift is profound. It moves you from a state of reactive stress to a state of creative power. You realize that the events of your life are not random attacks, they are mirrors. They are data points showing you exactly where you are out of alignment. Once you see it, you can adjust your internal state, and as surely as the seed sprouts in the soil, your external world will begin to rearrange itself to match your new configuration. The laws are always running in the background, whether you acknowledge them or not. You are either working with them, like a sailor catching the wind, or you are working against them, like a rower fighting the tide. The choice is yours. Chapter Summary. The Law of Correspondence. Your external reality is an extension of your internal state. Change the inner, and the outer must follow. The mirror principle, trying to fix life by only changing external circumstances is like trying to fix your reflection by wiping the mirror. The role of the brain, your reticular activating system, RAS, filters the world to match your core beliefs. Changing those beliefs changes what you perceive and what opportunities you find. The law of rhythm, life moves in cycles. Forcing constant output without periods of rest or winter leads to depletion. Surrender as alignment, letting life happen means aligning your internal frequency with your goals, rather than trying to force the external world to change. Faith in the unseen, developing the discipline to trust the process. Chapter 3, Understanding the Mind. To master the art of letting life happen, you must first understand the instrument you are using to navigate it. Most people walk through life assuming their mind is a single, unified command center, a pilot in a cockpit making rational decisions based on the facts at hand. However, the modern understanding of human psychology suggests something quite different. Your mind is more like a vast, complex ecosystem of competing systems, ancient survival instincts, and deeply ingrained automated programs. At the highest level, we have the conscious mind, the you that you identify with. This is the part that sets goals, dreams of a better future, and reads books like this one. It is logical, analytical, and highly imaginative. However, the conscious mind is only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface lies the subconscious, a vast repository of every experience, belief, and emotional pattern you have ever formed. The subconscious mind is designed for one primary purpose: efficiency. It wants to automate as much of your life as possible so you don't have to expend cognitive energy on simple tasks. When you learned to drive a car, it took immense focus. Today, you can drive home while lost in thought, arriving safely without remembering the specific turns you made. That is the subconscious mind running a script. This is a magnificent feature for survival, but it is a major obstacle for transformation. When you decide to change your life, perhaps to become more confident, start a business, or cultivate inner peace, your conscious mind is in charge. But as soon as you step out of your comfort zone, the subconscious mind flags this as new and, therefore, dangerous. It immediately attempts to drag you back to the safety of your old patterns. This is why you can have the most brilliant, high-level intentions in the morning, only to find yourself repeating the exact same self-sabotaging behaviors by the afternoon. It is not that you are weak, it is that your conscious desire is currently in a tug-of-war with a subconscious program that has been running for decades. Neuroscience calls this synaptic pruning and neuroplasticity. Your brain is physically shaped by what you do repeatedly. The neural pathways that support your current, limited way of living are thick, well-worn, and incredibly efficient. When you try to build a new way of thinking, you are essentially trying to build a new road through a dense, overgrown forest. Initially, it is exhausting. The path is narrow, hidden, and easy to lose. This is why most people give up on self-improvement after a few weeks. They mistake the initial friction of building new neural pathways for a lack of capability. To stop fighting yourself, you must learn to become the observer of your mind rather than the victim of it. In the field of mindfulness and cognitive therapy, this is often called metacognition, thinking about your thinking. Instead of saying, "I am an anxious person," you learn to say, "I am experiencing a thought of anxiety." The moment you create that distance, you take the power away from the subconscious script. You are no longer the thought, you are the one observing the thought. This distinction is crucial for the art of surrender. If you are deeply identified with your thoughts, you will feel the need to argue with them, justify them, or suppress them. All of these actions require massive amounts of energy and, paradoxically, give those negative thoughts more significance. When you observe them, you can let them pass through you like clouds across the sky. You acknowledge they are there, but you don't mistake them for the weather, and you certainly don't change your flight plan because of them. Furthermore, the mind is a meaning-making machine. It is constantly interpreting events to build a narrative about who you are and how the world works. If someone doesn't return your text, your mind might instantly write a story, "They don't respect me," or "I'm not important." That story then triggers an emotional reaction, which then dictates your behavior. But notice how that entire sequence was created by your mind, not by the event itself. The event was just a lack of a text. The suffering was a creative byproduct of your own interpretive machinery. When you start to understand the mechanics of your mind, you stop taking your thoughts so seriously. You realize that many of the facts your mind presents to you are actually just interpretations based on old data. When you stop forcing your mind to be different and start simply observing its patterns, you begin to deconstruct the old programming. You stop feeding the old stories, and eventually, the neural pathways associated with them begin to weaken. This is not a process of fixing your mind, it is a process of upgrading it. You are shifting from being a slave to your automatic reactions to becoming the conscious curator of your internal environment. You stop trying to force your mind into peace and start creating a mental landscape where peace is the natural default state. By watching the thoughts, you become the master of the space between the thought and the action. That space is where your power lies. It is the birthplace of your freedom. Chapter Summary. The dual mind, distinguishing between the conscious, goal-setting, and subconscious, automated, mind is the first step in ending internal conflict. The power of automation. Your subconscious is built for efficiency, not truth. It protects old habits because they are safe, even if they don't serve you. Building new paths, real change requires consistent, repetitive action to build new neural pathways. Initial friction is a sign of growth, not failure. The observer effect, practicing metacognition, observing your thoughts without identifying with them, detaches you from the victim narrative. Meaning making, recognize that your mind creates stories about events. You have the power to choose better stories that align with your potential. Creating space, mastery is found in the gap between a thought and an action, expanding this. Chapter 4, The Power of Belief. We often speak of belief as if it were a fragile, ethereal thing, a mere preference or an optimistic wish. In reality, belief is the most powerful technology you possess. It is the architectural blueprint of your entire life experience. Every action you take, every boundary you set, and every opportunity you pursue is limited or expanded by the fundamental beliefs you hold about yourself, others, and the nature of the world. When we talk about surrendering in the context of this book, we are not talking about abandoning your desires. We are talking about aligning your beliefs so that your desires can manifest without a constant, grinding struggle. If you believe that success is a zero-sum game, that for you to win, someone else must lose, you will subconsciously navigate your career with a combative, defensive energy. You will see colleagues as enemies and partners as threats. You are forcing your way through life because you believe the environment is inherently hostile. But what happens when you shift that core belief to the assumption that we live in a collaborative, abundant universe? Your entire nervous system relaxes. You stop wasting energy on vigilance and start using it for creation. The same amount of effort is expended, but the quality of that effort shifts from survival-based friction to growth-based flow. The neuroscience of belief is fascinating. When you truly hold a belief, your brain treats it as a factual, sensory input. If you believe you are capable of handling a difficult transition, your brain releases neurochemicals that support focus, resilience, and problem-solving. If you believe you are doomed to fail, your brain releases the stress hormone cortisol, which physically narrows your field of vision and diminishes your capacity for creative thought. You are literally making yourself less capable by holding on to a disempowering belief. Many people believe they are being realistic by clinging to negative or cautionary beliefs. They mistake cynicism for wisdom. They think, I'm just being practical, I don't want to get my hopes up. But this is not practicality, it is a fear-based survival strategy. It is an attempt to protect yourself from the pain of disappointment by ensuring disappointment happens in advance. This is the ultimate form of self-sabotage. You are forcing a negative outcome because you are terrified of the risk of an unguaranteed positive one. To change your life, you do not need to force new results, you need to cultivate new beliefs. This is a subtle but crucial distinction. You cannot force yourself to believe something you fundamentally find unbelievable. If you are struggling financially, and you tell yourself, I am a millionaire, your subconscious mind will instantly reject it as a lie, creating internal tension. This is why many positive affirmations fail. Instead, the art of surrender requires a process of belief upgrading. You start with a belief that is believable to you right now, a bridge belief. Instead of, I am a millionaire, you might begin with, I am a person who is learning how to create value and attract prosperity. Your mind accepts this. It feels true. As you act on that belief, you gather evidence that confirms it. Your brain then updates your reality, and you can move to the next level. This is how you systematically dismantle the walls that hold you back. Consider the role of belief in your relationships. If you believe that people are inherently unreliable, you will constantly monitor your loved ones, searching for evidence of betrayal. You will create tests for them to pass. This forcing behavior will eventually erode the trust you are looking for, causing them to withdraw, which in turn proves your original belief correct. You have created a self-fulfilling cycle of isolation. Surrender here looks like choosing the belief that people are doing the best they can with the resources and maturity they currently possess. When you operate from this belief, you open the door for connection. You stop forcing them to be who you need them to be and start inviting them to show you who they are. You become a sanctuary for them, and often, that change in your energy changes the way they show up for you. You have the power to consciously choose your operating system. You are not a static object, you are a dynamic consciousness. You can examine a belief you have held for 20 years, see that it no longer serves your current vision, and decide to replace it. This is not delusional. It is highly advanced self-mastery. The most successful people in history did not succeed because they had fewer obstacles, they succeeded because they held beliefs that kept them moving forward when everyone else would have stopped. They believed their work mattered, they believed in their own ability to adapt, and they believed that the how would reveal itself as they walked the path. Stop trying to force the external world to change. Look at your internal foundation. What are the core assumptions that have been governing your choices? Are they outdated? Are they rooted in fear? If so, have the courage to release them. A new life cannot be built on the old foundations of fear and limitation. When you change your belief, you change your relationship with reality. And when your relationship with reality changes, the way you experience the world shifts forever. Chapter Summary. Belief as architecture. Beliefs are not just thoughts. They are the blueprint for your actions, boundaries, and overall life experience. The energy of belief, operating from a belief of scarcity or hostility, forces you into a state of survival, which consumes energy. Operating from a belief of abundance allows for flow. Biological impact. Disempowering beliefs trigger cortisol and narrow your focus, while empowering beliefs support cognitive performance and resilience. The myth of realism. Cynicism is not wisdom. It is a fear-based protective mechanism that guarantees failure to avoid the pain of disappointment. The bridge technique. Use bridge beliefs, statements that are slightly more optimistic but still believable to your current mind, to incrementally upgrade your subconscious programming. Breaking the loop. Our beliefs often create self-fulfilling prophecies in relationships. Chapter 5. Reprogramming limiting patterns. If belief is the architectural blueprint of your life, then your patterns are the daily habits of construction. We often find ourselves in a frustrating cycle. We gain an insight, we feel inspired, and we resolve to change, yet within a few days, we are back to our old ways. We blame our lack of willpower, but the issue is not a failure of character, it is a failure of system design. You are trying to use a manual override to stop an automated, high-speed train. A pattern is essentially a loop of thought, emotion, and behavior that has been reinforced over time. Every time you react to stress with impatience, every time you choose distraction over deep work, and every time you minimize your own value in a conversation, you are strengthening a neural groove. Eventually, that groove becomes so deep that your brain defaults to it without your conscious permission. This is why, just trying harder never works. You are fighting the path of least resistance. To reprogram these limiting patterns, you must move from resistance to interruption. Most people try to stop a negative pattern by pushing against it. They think, I will not be lazy today, or I will not get angry at my partner. The problem is that the brain has trouble processing negative commands. To think about not being lazy, you first have to think about being lazy. You are focusing your energy on the very thing you want to eliminate. The art of surrender requires a more elegant approach, the pivot. Instead of focusing on stopping the old pattern, you focus on replacing it with a new, conscious choice as soon as you notice the impulse. You cannot simply delete a neural pathway, you must pave a new one over it. Let's look at a common example, the urge to check your phone whenever you feel a moment of boredom or anxiety. This is a pattern of emotional avoidance. Instead of sitting with the slight discomfort of the present moment, you reach for the dopamine hit of a screen. If you try to force yourself to stop being distracted, you will likely fail because you are not addressing the underlying emotion, the need for escape. To reprogram this, you must pause. When the impulse hits, acknowledge the feeling of discomfort. Don't push it away, just feel it for 3 seconds. Then, consciously choose a different, more aligned action, such as taking a deep breath or reframing the task you are about to do. This, pause and pivot, is the cornerstone of self-mastery. It creates the space between the impulse and the action. In that space, you are no longer a victim of your past programming, you are the architect of your future. You are demonstrating to your subconscious that you are capable of choosing differently, which slowly begins to erode the old, heavy groove. Neuroscience calls this Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together, wire together. By consistently choosing a new response, you are physically weakening the old connections and strengthening the new ones. It is not about perfection, it is about precision. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to catch yourself in the act of the old pattern, acknowledge it without judgment, and gently redirect yourself. We must also address the secondary gain of our limiting patterns. Sometimes, we keep a pattern because it serves us in a hidden way. For example, a person might stay in a pattern of over-explaining themselves to others. It is exhausting and disempowering, but the secondary gain might be a sense of control or the avoidance of being misunderstood. If you don't address the underlying fear, the fear of rejection or the desire to be validated, the pattern will persist regardless of how hard you try to stop it. When you identify the need the pattern is trying to meet, you can find a healthier way to meet that need. Surrender, in this context, means letting go of the need for the old pattern. It means admitting, this habit used to protect me, but it no longer serves who I am becoming. This is a compassionate, rather than punitive, process. When you treat yourself like a project to be managed with frustration, you trigger the brain's defense mechanisms. When you treat yourself like a friend to be coached with curiosity, you open the pathways for genuine change. Think about the patterns that currently limit your life. Are you waiting for a big moment to change everything? That is another form of resistance. The transformation happens in the micro moments. It happens in the choice to be kind when you usually react with defensiveness, the choice to save a small amount of money when you usually spend impulsively, or the choice to speak up when you usually stay silent. As you start to interrupt these patterns, you will feel a sense of internal resistance. This is normal. Your system is literally trying to maintain homeostasis, or stability. Your brain prefers the known misery to the unknown success because the known is predictable. Do not let this resistance stop you. Treat it as a sign that you are successfully breaking out of your cage. You are moving from the automatic life to the intentional life. By patiently, consistently, and kindly navigating these pivots, you are not just changing your habits, you are changing the biological infrastructure of your own consciousness. You are literally building a new version of yourself, one pivot at a time. Chapter Summary. The problem of trying. Trying to stop a negative pattern by pushing against it often reinforces the neural pathway you are trying to break. The pivot technique, instead of trying to eliminate an old habit, focus on the pause and pivot, a conscious intervention that inserts a new choice into the gap between impulse and action. Neuroplasticity, real change comes from creating new neural connections through repetition, not from a single moment of willpower. Addressing secondary gain. Understand the hidden need, like security, control, or safety, that your limiting pattern provides, and find a healthier way to satisfy it. Compassion over judgment. Self-criticism keeps you in survival mode. Approaching your patterns with curiosity and patience allows for faster, deeper, and more permanent change. Micro-changes. Transformation does not require a total overhaul, it is the accumulation. Chapter 6. The Science of Emotion and Feeling. We often talk about emotions as if they are weather, unpredictable storms that simply happen to us. We say, I am having a bad day, or I am feeling anxious, as if these states were external events that descended upon our lives without warning. However, the latest neuroscientific research reveals a more empowering truth: you are not just a spectator to your emotions, you are their primary architect. Emotions are not just biological reactions to the world, they are the output of your brain's best guess about what your bodily sensations mean based on your past experiences. This is a monumental shift in perspective. If your emotions are constructed by your brain, then you have a significant degree of agency in how they are formed. When you feel a tightness in your chest and a racing heart before a presentation, your brain searches its database for the meaning of those sensations. If it labels them as anxiety, you will experience panic. If it labels them as excitement, you will experience a surge of focused energy. The physical sensation is identical, the difference is the story your mind constructs around it. This is the essence of emotional mastery in the art of surrender. It is not about suppressing feelings or pretending you aren't human. It is about understanding that your brain is constantly predicting your emotional reality. If you have spent years interpreting challenges as threats, your brain will automatically construct fear as your primary emotional response to any situation that feels uncertain. The danger of living in a constant state of forced performance is that you keep your nervous system trapped in a state of high alert, low-level stress. When you are constantly pushing to achieve, your body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. Over time, your brain begins to interpret this chronic internal stress as your normal baseline. You then start looking for external reasons to feel stressed, because your brain wants to make sense of the internal chemicals you are producing. You have essentially become addicted to the chemistry of struggle. To move into a state of flow, you must learn to regulate your internal chemistry. This is where the practice of somatic awareness comes into play. Most of us are entirely disconnected from our bodies. We live entirely in our heads, treating our bodies as little more than a vehicle to transport our minds from one meeting to the next. But your body is where your emotions live. If you don't feel them, you can't process them. When you feel an emotion, especially a difficult one like anger, shame, or frustration, the worst thing you can do is force it away through suppression. Suppression is like pushing a beach ball under water. It requires constant, exhausting energy to keep it submerged, and the moment your focus wavers, it pops back up with even greater force. Surrender, in the context of emotion, means allowing yourself to feel the sensation. When a difficult emotion arises, try this: drop the story. Stop telling yourself why you are angry or who is to blame. Just focus on where the sensation lives in your body. Is it in your throat? Your stomach? Your shoulders? Describe the physical sensation as if you were a neutral scientist. There is a heat in my chest and a knot in my stomach. By observing the raw physical data, you strip away the story that gives the emotion its power to cause suffering. In doing so, the emotion often dissipates within minutes, because emotions are designed to be fluid, not stagnant. Furthermore, we must learn to cultivate the emotions we want to experience. This is not about toxic positivity, where you force yourself to smile while ignoring reality. It is about emotional hygiene. Just as you brush your teeth to maintain physical health, you must intentionally practice states of gratitude, curiosity, and awe to maintain your emotional health. When you intentionally lean into a feeling of gratitude, not for what you have achieved, but for the present moment itself, you change your brain's chemistry. You shift from a state of threat detection to a state of opportunity seeking. This is a physiological advantage. When you are in a state of appreciation, your heart rate variability increases, your breathing slows, and your prefrontal cortex comes back online. You are literally thinking more clearly because you are feeling better. The goal is to stop being a reactive creature. You want to move from being an emotional thermometer, simply reflecting the temperature of your environment, to an emotional thermostat, setting the climate regardless of what is happening around you. You cannot always control what happens in your life, but you can absolutely control the best guess your brain makes about what those events mean. This is the art of surrender. It is surrendering the need to control the external world so that you can invest your energy into the only thing you truly own, your internal state. When you master your emotions, you stop being tossed around by the waves of your circumstances. You become the captain of your own vessel, capable of navigating through any storm with clarity, poise, and unshakable power. Chapter Summary. Emotions as constructs. Your brain creates emotions based on its past predictions of your bodily sensations. You can influence this construction by changing your interpretations. The addiction to stress. Constant forcing and overachieving floods the body with stress chemicals, making your brain perceive stress as your natural baseline. The power of somatic awareness. Connect with your body to process emotions. Suppressing them, the beach ball effect, only leads to explosive, uncontrollable outbursts later. Dropping the story. When a difficult emotion arises, focus on the raw physical sensation rather than the narrative. This neutralizes the emotional charge and allows the feeling to pass. Emotional hygiene. Actively cultivate positive states like gratitude and curiosity to shift your physiology into a state of opportunity seeking, which enhances cognitive performance. From thermometer to thermostat, mastery means. Chapter 7, Imagination and Mental Rehearsal. We are often told that seeing is believing. We wait for evidence to appear in our physical reality before we allow ourselves to entertain the possibility of success. However, the most effective creators in history, the innovators, the artists, and the masters of their craft, operate in the inverse. They know that believing is seeing. The capacity to visualize, rehearse, and embody a future reality before it manifests is perhaps the most sophisticated tool available to the human mind. When you use your imagination to rehearse a scenario, you are not merely daydreaming. From a neuroscientific perspective, you are engaging in mental simulation. When you vividly imagine yourself performing a task, a complex presentation, a difficult conversation, or a high-stakes negotiation, the exact same neural pathways that would fire during the actual event are activated. Your brain struggles to distinguish between a vivid, intentional mental rehearsal and a real-life experience. By practicing in the theater of your mind, you are effectively downloading the experience into your nervous system, building the competence and confidence you need before you ever step into the arena. This is the bridge between surrender and intention. Most people fail to manifest their goals because they are imagining the wrong things. They spend their time vividly rehearsing the ways things could go wrong. They create detailed, high-definition movies in their heads of rejection, failure, and catastrophe. They treat this as planning or risk management, but they are actually just programming their subconscious mind to expect and execute failure. You are wasting your creative power on a future you do not want. The art of surrender involves taking command of this creative faculty. It is about letting go of the need to worry about every possible negative outcome and instead committing your imagination to the outcome you intend to create. This is not about magically wishing for results, it is about preparing your nervous system for success. When you rehearse a successful outcome, you reduce the novelty and fear that the brain associates with the task. You are teaching your subconscious that this level of success is normal for you. To do this effectively, you must engage your emotions. A dry, logical list of goals is not enough to move the needle. Your brain is an emotional organ, it learns through intensity. When you rehearse, you must immerse yourself in the feeling of the outcome. How does it feel to be the person who has already achieved that goal? What is the quality of your breath? How do you carry your body? What is the tone of your voice? When you marry a clear vision with a strong, embodied emotion, you create a powerful, emotional anchor that influences your decision-making, your body language, and your energy throughout the day. This practice also helps you navigate the unknown with grace. Because you have already walked the path in your mind, you are less likely to be derailed by unexpected detours. You have mentally explored the terrain, identified the potential traps, and practiced your response. When challenges inevitably arise in reality, you respond with the calmness of someone who has been there before. You are not forcing a specific, rigid path, you are holding a steady, flexible vision while remaining open to the most effective way to arrive at the destination. Furthermore, mental rehearsal allows you to dissolve the resistance caused by imposter syndrome. If you have never been in a position of high leadership or financial success, your mind will naturally see it as an alien environment. By repeatedly visiting that version of yourself in your imagination, you normalize it. You make the future you familiar. You begin to act from that identity rather than from your past history. This is the secret to transcending your previous limitations. You aren't forcing yourself to change. You are simply stepping into a costume you have already spent weeks tailoring in your mind. You must be careful not to confuse this with passive wishing. Mental rehearsal is an active, disciplined practice. It requires the same dedication as any other professional skill. Set aside time, just as you would for a workout or a client meeting. Sit in silence, close your eyes, and enter that space of creative possibility. Do not force the images. Let them flow naturally, but guide them with the intention of the person you are becoming. This process also shifts your relationship with time. When you are constantly chasing a goal in the physical world, you are operating from a state of lack. You are here, and your goal is over there. When you live into the goal through imagination, you bring the feeling of the goal into the present. You begin to operate from the frequency of completion. Paradoxically, this state of having is the most magnetic state for attracting actual results. You stop pushing, and you start drawing things toward you. By mastering your imagination, you reclaim the power to direct your life's narrative. You are no longer writing your future based on the constraints of your past. You are designing it from the blueprint of your highest potential. This is not just a mental exercise, it is an act of creation. Every time you consciously rehearse your victory, you are sculpting your neural pathways to align with your intentions. You are preparing your reality to meet you halfway. Chapter Summary. Believing is seeing. Imagination is a sophisticated mental technology that prepares the nervous system for success before reality confirms it. Mental simulation, vividly rehearsing a scenario, fires the same neural pathways as the actual event, building competence and reducing performance anxiety. The trap of worrying, constantly imagining failure is actually a powerful, albeit destructive, form of mental rehearsal. Stop programming your mind for the future you don't want. The power of embodiment, effective visualization requires engaging with the emotions and physical sensations of your goal, not just the logical outcome. Normalizing success, repeatedly visiting a higher level of performance in your mind makes that state feel natural and attainable, which dissolves imposter syndrome. Operating from completion, bringing the feeling of success into your current presence creates a magnetic state. Chapter 8, Faith, Persistence, and Action. There is a common misunderstanding that to surrender is to drift aimlessly, like a leaf on a stream, waiting for the current to take you where you need to go. This is a dangerous misinterpretation. Surrender is not the absence of effort, it is the presence of aligned effort. It is the wisdom to know that while you are responsible for the action, you are not responsible for the outcome in the way your ego believes. This distinction, the marriage of intense, persistent action with an unshakable, detached faith, is the secret engine of high-level mastery. Faith, in this context, is not a religious concept, it is a psychological stance. It is the unwavering conviction that your actions possess intrinsic value and that they are contributing to a cumulative result, even when the evidence of that result is nowhere to be seen. Most people fail because they stop the moment the feedback loop goes silent. They work hard for 2 weeks, see no massive shift in their circumstances, and conclude that the path is wrong. They abandon their efforts, thereby ensuring that the very success they sought will never materialize. This is where persistence becomes your greatest asset. Persistence is not just repeating the same task, it is the iterative process of showing up, analyzing the results, adjusting your approach, and staying committed to the underlying vision. When you have faith, you don't panic when a specific tactic fails. You don't view a setback as a sign that the universe is blocking you, you view it as data. You learn, you iterate, and you move forward. You are not forcing the result, you are refining the execution. Think of an archer. To hit the bullseye, they must hold the bow with strength and focus, the action, but they must release the string with a relaxed, open hand, the surrender. If they hold on too tightly, they deflect the arrow. If they are too loose, the energy is lost. You must learn to hold your vision with the strength of your commitment, but release your grip on the how and the when of the manifestation. When you act from a place of faith, you remove the desperation that kills opportunity. Desperation creates a frantic, low-frequency energy that pushes people and resources away. People can smell the neediness in your pitch, the insecurity in your leadership, and the anxiety in your creative process. But when you act from faith, you operate with a sense of quiet knowing. You are simply doing the work because it is what you do, and because you are certain that the harvest will come in its own time. This energy is incredibly attractive, it builds trust, inspires confidence, and creates space for serendipitous connections. The neuroscience of persistence is rooted in the reward system of the brain. When you only focus on the end goal, you keep your dopamine reward far in the future. This creates a state of chronic dissatisfaction because you are constantly telling your brain that, where you are, is not good enough. By shifting your focus to the process, to the mastery of the action itself, you trigger the brain's reward centers in the present. You begin to derive pleasure from the work, the discipline, and the learning. This makes persistence sustainable. You might start to micromanage, to compromise your values for a quick win, or to spiral into doubt. This is precisely when you must double down on your surrender. Instead of asking, "Why isn't this working?" ask yourself, "What is the next best action I can take from this position?" Keep your eyes on the horizon, but keep your feet firmly planted in the present task. The law of cause and effect is absolute, it never forgets a deposit. Every ounce of effort you put into your craft, every time you choose integrity over expediency, and every time you persist through doubt, you are building momentum. You cannot see the roots of the tree growing beneath the surface, but that does not mean they aren't there, strengthening the foundation for the eventual growth. You must be the guardian of your own persistence. The world will constantly offer you reasons to quit. It will highlight the success of others, the difficulty of your circumstances, and the realism of your current position. But you are not living in the world of the average, you are living in the world of the intentional. Your faith is the shield that protects your vision from the cynicism of the crowd. So, continue to act. Work with passion, build with excellence, and iterate with wisdom. But do it with a light heart. You are not pushing a boulder, you are planting a garden. You are doing your part, and you are trusting the nature of reality to do the rest. That is the ultimate power. It is the point where action becomes art, and where work becomes a form of worship. Chapter Summary. The Archer's Paradox. True mastery is found in the balance between the strength of focused action and the release of the how and when. Faith is a stance. Faith is not just a feeling. It is the psychological commitment to the value of your actions regardless of immediate external evidence. The trap of desperation, acting from a place of neediness repels success, acting from a place of quiet knowing attracts it. Persistence versus forcing. Persistence is iterative learning, forcing is rigid, ego-driven repetition that often ignores necessary adjustments. Rewarding the process. To make persistence sustainable, learn to find satisfaction in the work itself rather than delaying your dopamine hit until the final result is achieved. Navigating the gap. When external reality lags behind your efforts, use that time to Chapter 9, Overcoming Fear, Doubt, and Resistance. Fear is not an enemy to be destroyed, it is a signal to be decoded. In our modern age, we have pathologized fear, viewing it as a sign of weakness or a red flag that we are on the wrong path. But the truth is, fear is the biological shadow of your ambition. The closer you get to a significant breakthrough, to a version of your life that requires you to step out of your old identity, the louder the alarm bells of your nervous system will ring. If you were not doing something that mattered, you would not be afraid. The primary form of fear that plagues the high performer is not the fear of danger, it is the fear of being seen. It is the fear that if you put your true work into the world, if you stand for what you really believe in, or if you aim for the level of success you truly desire, you will be judged, found wanting, or rejected. This fear is deeply rooted in our evolutionary history, where being cast out of the tribe was a death sentence. Your brain does not know the difference between being rejected by a client on LinkedIn and being abandoned by your ancestors in the wilderness. It treats the threat of social rejection with the same physiological intensity as a predator. When you feel this fear, your default response is to force a feeling of safety. You procrastinate, you overprepare, you soften your message, or you distract yourself with busy work that keeps you safe from the real challenge. You are essentially trying to build a fortress around your ego. But surrender, in the face of fear, means acknowledging the sensation without letting it dictate your behavior. You look at the fear and say, I see you. You are trying to keep me safe, but I have decided to go in this direction. Doubt, the twin of fear, operates in the mind by creating a continuous loop of what-if scenarios. What if it doesn't work? What if I'm not good enough? What if I've made a mistake? Doubt is the ego's way of maintaining the status quo. It is an intellectual defense mechanism. To overcome it, you must understand that doubt is not a valid piece of data, it is just a background noise of your current level of programming. You don't need to solve your doubt before you take action. You can act while being afraid, and you can create while being in doubt. In fact, most of the world's great works were created by people who were terrified but moved forward anyway. Then there is the phenomenon of resistance. This is the invisible force that pushes back the moment you try to elevate your life. It is the sudden desire to clean your house when you should be writing your manuscript. It is the rational argument your mind provides for why now isn't the right time to launch your project. Resistance is the byproduct of growth. It is the friction caused by the movement from one state of being to another. To overcome these, you must employ the principle of action first. Do not wait for the feeling of courage to arrive before you act. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the presence of action in the face of fear. When you take the action, even a small one, you change your physiology. You break the cycle of rumination. You prove to your subconscious that the world did not end, which immediately lowers the intensity of the fear. Another powerful technique is the practice of shadow integration. We often fear because we have disowned parts of ourselves, our ambition, our intensity, our desire for more. We think, if I succeed, I might become a bad person, or, if I have money, I will lose my humility. When you identify the shadow beliefs that make you fear your own success, you can integrate them. You can realize that you can have both. You can be successful and kind, ambitious and grounded. By giving yourself permission to be the full, complex version of yourself, you stop the internal tug-of-war that drains your energy. Surrender means accepting that the path of growth will always be uncomfortable. If you are waiting for a day where you feel 100% confident, where the path is clear, and where you have no doubt, you will be waiting forever. That day does not exist. The masters of life are not the people who have eliminated fear, they are the people who have become comfortable with being uncomfortable. They have learned to wear their fear like a loose garment rather than a suit of armor. When you stop fighting your fear, you stop leaking energy. You no longer have to spend 80% of your day managing your anxiety about your work, you can spend 100% of your energy on the work. You find that the courage you were looking for was not a feeling you had to cultivate, but a decision you had to make. The next time you feel the constriction of fear, the haze of doubt, or the paralysis of resistance, don't run from it. Lean into it. Recognize it for what it is, the physical sensation of your expansion. It is the barrier between who you are and who you are becoming. By walking through that barrier, you don't just gain the result you were seeking, you gain the most valuable possession of all, the knowledge that you are no longer a person who can be stopped by their own internal weather. Chapter Summary. Fear as a signal. Fear is the biological shadow of your ambition. The more important the growth, the more resistance your nervous system will generate. The fear of being seen. High performers often struggle with the fear of judgment, which is an evolutionary survival mechanism misapplied to modern professional challenges. Action first. Never wait for the feeling of courage to arrive. Courage is the action you take while you are afraid. Decoding doubt. Doubt is a defense mechanism designed to keep you safe in the status quo. You don't have to resolve your doubts to move forward, you only need to act in spite of them. Shadow integration. Often we fear our own success because of subconscious beliefs, e.g., success makes me greedy. Integrating these shadows allows you to pursue your goals with full alignment. Comfort in discomfort. Mastery is not the absence of fear but the ability to remain functional and graceful. Chapter 10. Applying the principles to relationships. We tend to treat our relationships as final destinations. Once we find a partner, hire the right team, or secure a friendship, we expect it to be a finished, static state of happily ever after. We then exert immense energy trying to force those people to remain the way they were when we first connected, or forcing them to change into who we need them to be to feel secure. This, of course, is the death of connection. In relationships, as in life, the moment you begin to force is the moment you begin to lose the power of the bond. The art of surrender in relationships is the practice of radical acceptance combined with intentional influence. It is the understanding that you are in a partnership with a free, evolving human being, not a piece of software that you can update or troubleshoot to your liking. When you approach a partner, a child, or a colleague from a place of forcing, you are essentially telling them, you are not enough as you are, you must change for me to be okay. This is experienced by the other person as pressure, which naturally triggers their defensive, protective instincts. To move from force to flow, we must first address the need for control that underlies our relational friction. Why do we feel the need to change others? Usually, it is because we are using them to regulate our own anxiety. If our partner is successful, we feel secure. If our child is well-behaved, we feel like a good parent. You are using the people in your life as props for your own self-worth. When you surrender this need, you stop making their behavior the barometer of your happiness. This allows you to show up as a grounded, supportive presence, which is the most powerful way to influence them. The most transformative principle you can apply to your relationships is the concept of modeling, not managing. If you want more openness in your marriage, stop demanding your partner open up and start being the person who speaks with vulnerability and truth. If you want more productivity from your team, stop micromanaging and start modeling the focus and autonomy you wish to see. People are deeply mimetic, they naturally gravitate toward the frequency you embody. When you stop forcing them and start being the example, you create a vacuum that invites them to rise to that level. There is also the profound necessity of the neutral space. In any significant relationship, there are moments of conflict. The ego wants to win, to be right, or to force an apology. This is where the practice of surrender becomes truly difficult, and truly rewarding. Instead of leaning into the argument, can you lean into the pause? Can you say, I am feeling triggered right now, and I don't want to react from that place? This takes the heat out of the exchange. By surrendering your need to be the winner of the argument, you prioritize the winning of the relationship. This is not the same as being a doormat or abandoning your boundaries. In fact, surrender makes your boundaries more effective. When you are forcing, you are frantic, and your boundaries are erratic. Sometimes you are too rigid because you are afraid, other times you are too loose because you are seeking approval. When you operate from a place of surrender, your boundaries are calm, clear, and non-negotiable. You don't need to shout to establish a boundary, you simply state it with the authority of someone who knows who they are. Think about your most challenging relationship today. Now, imagine if you were to release the internal pressure to fix, change, or control the other person. What if you gave them the space to be exactly who they are, while simultaneously holding your own standard of excellence in how you show up? You would likely find that the tension in the relationship begins to evaporate. You stop looking for what is wrong and start observing what is actually happening. This clarity allows you to make better decisions, not from a place of panic, but from a place of wisdom. Furthermore, we must recognize that relationships are mirrors. If you feel constantly disrespected, ask yourself where you are disrespecting your own needs. If you feel unheard, ask yourself where you are failing to listen to your own internal guidance. By taking ownership of your side of the mirror, you stop the blame cycle. You start to see that by healing your internal state, you automatically shift the dynamic of your external relationships. Surrender in relationships is ultimately an act of trust. It is trusting that you are worthy of connection, even if the other person is not acting exactly the way you want them to at this moment. It is trusting that you can handle the truth, whatever it is. It is trusting that the most authentic connection is the only one worth having, and that you do not need to manipulate, coerce, or force anyone into your life. When you let go of the struggle, you create room for something much more beautiful. A connection based on mutual growth, respect, and the freedom to be fully human together. Chapter Summary. The myth of static relationships. Stop expecting relationships to be finished products, they are living, evolving dynamics. Modeling versus managing. Stop trying to force others to change, influence them by embodying the qualities, vulnerability, focus, honesty, you want to see. Regulating your own anxiety. Understand that the need to control others is usually a way to regulate your own internal insecurity. The power of the pause. In conflict, prioritize the win of the relationship over the win of the argument by pausing before you react. Boundaries as authority. True boundaries don't require force or anger, they are clear, calm, and grounded statements of who you are and what you allow. Relationships as mirrors. Use conflicts to look at yourself, not just the other person. Your internal. Chapter 11. Applying the principles to wealth and success. This mindset creates a state of chronic scarcity, because it is rooted in the belief that there is a limited supply of success and that you must compete, strain, and exhaust yourself to claim your share. The art of surrender in the realm of wealth is not about giving up your ambition or your goals. It is about shifting your primary motivation from fear-based survival to contribution-based creation. When you operate from a place of forcing, you are essentially acting from a fear that if you don't push, you won't survive. This triggers a biological state that narrows your creativity and prevents you from seeing the broader, more profitable opportunities that exist in abundance. When you surrender the need to force your success, you start to see the world differently. You realize that wealth is simply an energetic representation of the value you provide to the world. If you want to increase your wealth, you don't need to force the money to come to you, you need to focus on the value you are putting into the marketplace. When you obsess over the result, the money, you become desperate and short-sighted. When you obsess over the service, the value, you become magnetic. This shift requires a profound level of trust in the law of exchange. If you are solving a genuine problem, providing a service that eases human suffering, or creating something that brings beauty and efficiency into the world, the market will naturally reward you. The struggle often arises because we are trying to sell things that don't solve real problems, or we are trying to extract value before we have provided it. Surrender means having the patience to build, the wisdom to listen to the market's feedback, and the courage to iterate until your offering is truly valuable. Consider the role of detachment in negotiations and business decisions. When you are forcing a deal, you are attached to a specific outcome at a specific time. This attachment makes you weak. The other party can feel your desperation, and they will use it to lower your price or tighten your terms. When you operate from a position of surrender, you are committed to a positive outcome, but you are not attached to this specific deal. You have a best alternative to a negotiated agreement, BATNA, and you have the confidence that if this deal isn't right, the right one will come. This detachment gives you incredible leverage. It allows you to walk away, which is the most powerful move in any negotiation. We must also dismantle the idea that working harder is always better. In the world of intellectual and creative work, the quality of your output is almost always a product of the quality of your internal state. You can force yourself to work for 12 hours while in a state of anxiety, and you will produce mediocre, error-prone work. Or, you can work for 4 hours in a state of deep, aligned flow, and produce work that is world-class. Surrender is about protecting the flow. It is about knowing when to stop, when to rest, and when to step away from the keyboard so that your mind can synthesize new ideas. True success is sustainable. If you reach your financial goals but arrive at the finish line burned out, cynical, and disconnected from your purpose, you haven't succeeded, you've just survived a temporary boom. The art of surrender allows you to build a structure that grows with you. You learn to delegate, you learn to trust your team, and you learn to build systems that work for you, rather than you being the sole battery powering the entire operation. When you stop trying to control every variable, you also become much more responsive to the signs and nudges of the market. You begin to notice trends before they become obvious, you build deeper relationships with key influencers, and you act on intuition that is backed by experience. You are no longer just pushing. You are navigating. You are watching the currents of the industry and placing your sails to catch the wind. Finally, remember that wealth is a tool, not a state of being. If you believe that money will finally fix your internal struggle, you will be disappointed, because you will bring your forcing energy into your new bank account balance. Prosperity is a feeling of fullness, a sense of having enough, and a confidence in your ability to create more. This is an internal state that you can cultivate now, regardless of your current income. Ironically, when you cultivate this state of inner prosperity, you become a much better entrepreneur, leader, and investor, because you are no longer making decisions from a place of lack. You are moving into a new era of your professional life. An era where you don't have to break your back to build your legacy. You are doing the work, you are providing the value, and you are trusting the process. You are allowing your success to be an expression of your highest self, rather than a frantic attempt to prove your worth to the world. Chapter Summary. The shift from survival to creation, move your motivation from forcing to survive to creating to serve. Value is the engine of wealth. Magnetism versus desperation, obsessing over the result creates desperation, which repels opportunity, obsessing over the value provided creates magnetism, which attracts resources. The power of detachment. In negotiations, the ability to walk away, detachment, is a source of strength that creates leverage and respect. Flow versus grind, quality output is a function of your internal state. Protect your state of flow, it is your most profitable asset. Building systems, sustainable wealth requires moving from doing everything to building systems, which is the ultimate act of surrendering control to a process. Internal prosperity, prosperity is an internal state. Cultivate it now to make better, more intuitive decisions. Chapter 12, Daily Practices that Reinforce Transformation. Knowledge without implementation is merely entertainment. You can read every page of this book, understand the philosophy of surrender, and intellectually agree with the principles of flow, yet find your life remains exactly the same. The difference between a philosophy and a lifestyle is the daily, non-negotiable rituals that anchor your nervous system in the new reality. Transformation does not happen in the big, dramatic moments of change, it happens in the mundane, repetitive decisions you make every single morning. The first practice is the morning alignment. Most people start their day in a state of reactive forcing. They wake up, grab their phone, and immediately flood their brain with the world's demands, emails, news, social media, and tasks. You have effectively surrendered your nervous system to the chaos of the external world before your feet have even touched the floor. To practice surrender, you must reclaim the first hour of your day. Spend this time in silence, meditation, or light movement. During this time, set your internal climate. Visualize the day ahead, not as a checklist of tasks to conquer, but as a sequence of opportunities to express your purpose. You are not doing the day, you are entering it. The second practice is the midday reset. Your nervous system has a natural rhythm. By the middle of the day, cortisol levels often rise, and the force mindset begins to take over. You might feel the urge to push harder, eat junk food, or lose your patience. Create a simple, 3-minute ritual to interrupt this pattern. Step away from your workspace, take 3 deep, intentional breaths, and ask yourself, am I operating from a place of flow, or am I forcing? This brief moment of metacognition is enough to break the momentum of your subconscious programming. It allows you to shift back into a state of intentional action rather than reactive stress. The third practice is the evening release. We carry the baggage of the day into our beds, which prevents us from getting the restorative rest we need. When you hold on to the frustrations, the to-do items, and the uncompleted tasks of the day, you stay in a state of hyperarousal. Before you go to sleep, practice a mental offboarding. Write down your goals for tomorrow so your brain doesn't have to keep them in active memory. Then, consciously acknowledge what you accomplished. If you didn't finish everything, surrender the remainder to the next day. This is an act of trust, trusting that you are enough, and that tomorrow will provide the energy and clarity needed for the next steps. Fourth, implement the practice of curiosity in conflict. Throughout your day, you will encounter people and situations that trigger you. Instead of immediately reacting with the old pattern of defensiveness, assign yourself the goal of being the most curious person in the room. When someone challenges you or a plan goes awry, ask, what is interesting about this, or what is this situation trying to show me? Curiosity is the antidote to the ego's need to force a specific outcome. It turns potential conflicts into data-gathering exercises, which keeps you in a state of grounded power. Fifth, cultivate a gratitude for the process. We are so conditioned to only feel grateful for the final result, the closed deal, the finished project, the milestone reached. This keeps us in a state of wanting. You must flip this. Find something to be grateful for in the struggle itself. Be grateful for the complexity of the problem you are solving, because it makes you smarter. Be grateful for the difficult person you are working with, because they are teaching you patience. When you find gratitude in the process, you strip away the resistance that makes the work feel like a burden. Finally, remember the power of presence. The most potent practice of all is the simple return to the now. Whenever you feel that familiar feeling of forcing, that tightness in your chest, that frantic speed in your thoughts, pause and feel your feet on the floor. Take a deep breath. Realize that you are here, you are breathing, and the world is not falling apart. In this present moment, you are perfectly capable of handling whatever is directly in front of you. You don't need to control the next 10 years, you only need to master the next 10 minutes. These practices are not tasks to add to your already busy life, they are keys to unlock the energy you are currently wasting on struggle. By building these small, consistent rituals, you are creating a safety net for your transformation. You are signaling to your brain that this is the new way of operating. Over time, these practices will become so ingrained that you won't even think about them. You will just be this person. You will move through your life with the grace of someone who knows that when you align yourself with the laws of life, you never have to force anything again. Chapter Summary. Morning Alignment. Claim your first hour to set your internal climate, preventing a reactive start to your day. Midday Reset. Use a 3-minute ritual to catch the forcing impulse and realign your energy for the afternoon. Evening Release. Offboard your brain before sleep to ensure deep rest, surrender unfinished tasks to tomorrow. Curiosity over conflict. Use curiosity as a tool to remain grounded and observant during stressful interactions. Gratitude for the process. Stop waiting for the result to feel good. Find satisfaction in the learning, the struggle, and the growth happening right now. Return to presence. The ultimate surrender is anchoring in the now. Handle. Chapter 13, Becoming Your Future Self. We have spent our time together dismantling the old, exhausted ways of operating, the pushing, the forcing, and the desperate attachment to outcomes. But now, we must address the most profound part of this journey, the identity shift. To live the life you dream of, you cannot remain the person you currently are. The person who is struggling, doubting, and forcing is a version of you that served a specific purpose in your past. But that version of you is not equipped to navigate the territory you are about to enter. You are not just changing your habits, you are undergoing a metamorphosis of the self. The concept of your future self is not a distant, mythical being waiting for you at some finish line. It is a biological reality. Every decision you make today either signals to your brain that you are still the old you, or that you are stepping into the future you. This is the core of true personal transformation. It is the practice of living from the vision of your desired identity before your circumstances catch up. Most people try to change their lives through effort-based actions. They focus on what they need to do to get what they want. The person who wants to be a successful leader focuses on the to-do list of a leader. But true transformation happens through identity-based actions. Instead of focusing on what you need to do, focus on who you need to be to naturally produce those results. When you make a decision, ask yourself, what would the version of me who has already mastered this situation do? This question is a powerful lens. It immediately pulls you out of your current, limited perspective and invites you to access a higher, more evolved way of thinking. When you start to act from the identity of your future self, you will feel a sense of internal friction. This is the identity gap. It is the space between the person you have been and the person you are becoming. The old version of you will feel threatened. It will send you signals of discomfort, self-doubt, and the urge to return to normal. Do not mistake this for a sign that you are moving in the wrong direction. It is proof that you are successfully breaking the seal on your old programming. You must also learn to release the old stories. We all have narratives that we carry like heavy luggage. I'm just not the type of person who is good with money, or I always struggle in my relationships. These stories aren't facts, they are just memories we have decided to keep fresh. If you continue to tell the same stories, you will continue to have the same experiences. Your future self has a different autobiography. They have a different interpretation of the past, and they have a different vision for the future. Start telling that new story today. Speak about your goals as if they are inevitable. Speak about your challenges as if they are small hurdles on a path of certain progress. Surrendering into this new identity requires a leap of faith. You have to be willing to leave behind the version of yourself that felt safe, because it was predictable, even if it was limited. You have to be willing to be a beginner again, even if you were an expert at your old way of living. This is the ultimate surrender, giving up the attachment to your past labels and titles so that you can become an open, fluid vessel for your own potential. As you embody this future self, you will find that the things you used to force begin to happen with an eerie, effortless timing. This is not magic, it is the alignment of your frequency. Because your actions, your thoughts, and your beliefs are now in harmony, you are no longer sending mixed signals to the world. You are becoming a coherent force. Opportunities that were invisible to your old self become obvious. People who resonate with your new identity are drawn to you. You are essentially shifting into a different dimension of your own life. This process is not a linear climb. You will have days where you feel like you are back in the old patterns. Do not condemn yourself. Acknowledge it, observe it with curiosity, and then gently return to the persona of your future self. You are not a robot, you are a living consciousness learning a new way to operate. The process is the point. Ask yourself tonight. If I were the person I am meant to become, how would I handle my work tomorrow? How would I treat my family? How would I speak to myself when things get difficult? Then, let that version of you take the lead. You are not waiting for the transformation to happen, you are practicing it into existence. You are the sculptor and the statue, the artist and the masterpiece. With every intentional act, you are carving away the parts of you that were never meant to survive, revealing the brilliant, capable, and already whole being that has been waiting for you all along. Chapter Summary. Identity-based transformation, move from doing, action-based, to being, identity-based. Decisions should stem from the person you are becoming, not the person you have been. The identity gap. Understand that the discomfort you feel during growth is simply the friction of leaving your old, limited self behind. Rewriting your autobiography, stop identifying with old, limiting narratives. Your future self has a new story, start telling it today. Fluidity over labels, true surrender involves letting go of the titles and labels that kept you constrained, allowing you to become a dynamic vessel for potential. Coherence and alignment, when your internal state, beliefs, identity aligns with your external action, you become a coherent force, naturally attracting opportunities. Practice, not perfection, you will backslide, and that is okay. The goal is Chapter 14, Living the Philosophy Every Day. We have traveled from the mechanics of the mind to the architecture of belief, from the science of emotion to the art of identity. You have learned why forcing is an illusion of control and how surrendering into flow is the highest form of personal power. But now, we must address the most critical phase, the transition from learning to living. How do you integrate this philosophy into the messy, unpredictable, and often demanding reality of your everyday life? Living this philosophy every day means recognizing that there is no off switch for your consciousness. You do not just apply these principles when you are meditating or planning your goals, you apply them in the traffic jam, the difficult meeting, the sleepless night, and the awkward social interaction. The true test of your transformation is not how you perform when life is going well, but how you navigate the moments when life demands more of you than you feel you have to give. When you are living this philosophy, you stop waiting for the world to create a perfect environment for your happiness. You realize that the art of letting life happen is not a passive reception of events, but an active, creative engagement with the present moment. You become a participant who is fully aware that while you cannot control the wind, you are the absolute master of your own sails. Think of your life as a canvas that is constantly being painted by the brushstrokes of your responses. Most people paint their canvas with the colors of frustration, fear, and reactive judgment. They look at their life and feel like they are watching it happen, feeling helpless as the dark colors appear. But when you live this philosophy, you pick up the brush. When something challenging happens, a loss, a setback, a misunderstanding, you don't just accept it in a state of defeat. You look at it and ask, how can I integrate this experience into the masterpiece of my life? You choose your response. You choose your meaning. You choose your state of mind. This creates a life of dynamic stability. You are not static. You are constantly moving, learning, and adjusting, but you are anchored in a deep sense of internal peace that is not shaken by external change. You stop being the person who has to do things and become the person who chooses to do them. This is the difference between slavery to circumstance and mastery of experience. You are no longer trying to be successful, you are simply existing in a state of success, regardless of the bank account or the accolades. Living this philosophy also means being deeply present with the people around you. One of the greatest costs of the forcing mindset is the way it fragments our attention. We are physically present with our loved ones, but mentally, we are at work, worrying about a future that hasn't happened or regretting a past we cannot change. When you live in the flow, you give your presence as a gift. You listen with the intent to understand, not to judge or reply. You engage with your family, your friends, and your colleagues with an open, authentic heart. You realize that connection is the currency of a wealthy life, and you become a master at investing that currency. There will be days when you forget. There will be days when the old, forcing patterns surge back with a vengeance. You will feel the tension, the urge to panic, and the desire to control. When this happens, do not judge yourself. That judgment is just another form of forcing. Instead, treat it as a gentle reminder to return to your center. Take a breath, acknowledge the contraction, and surrender back into the flow. The master is not the person who never loses their way, it is the person who has the quickest, most graceful way of finding their way back home. Living this philosophy is a commitment to the long game. You are building a life that is designed to last, a life that is built on the bedrock of self-mastery rather than the shifting sands of external validation. You are proving to yourself, through the testimony of your own experiences, that you can be trusted to handle whatever reality brings your way. As you move through your days, notice the small victories. Notice when you choose to pause instead of react. Notice when you choose faith instead of fear. Notice when you allow yourself to be vulnerable instead of defensive. These are not small things, they are the signals of a massive internal restructuring. You are changing the way you interact with the fabric of reality itself. You are no longer the person you were when you picked up this book. You are the architect of your own experience. You have the tools, the understanding, and the power to create a life that is not just successful by the world's standards, but deeply, profoundly, and authentically your own. Keep going. The flow is always there, waiting for you to step into it. It is your natural state. Welcome home. Chapter Summary. Integration over education. Transformation is not about knowing, but about living these principles in the mundane, daily reality of your life. The brushstroke principle. You are the painter of your life's canvas, every response you choose is a stroke that defines your internal and external world. Dynamic stability. True peace comes from a state of grounded motion, you are constantly evolving, but your internal center remains unshakable by external events. Presence as currency. Move away from the fragmentation caused by forcing, and give your loved ones the gift of your full, undivided attention. The grace of return. You will slip into old habits. Success is defined by how quickly and kindly you can return to your center. The long game. This is a lifestyle, not a project. Focus on the compounding. Chapter 15, Your New Beginning, Sustaining the Transformation. We have arrived at the final threshold. Throughout these chapters, we have dismantled the heavy machinery of force, recalibrated your internal instruments, and laid the foundation for a life defined by alignment, grace, and authentic power. You have learned that your previous struggle was not a result of your inadequacy, but a result of operating against the grain of the very laws that govern human success and fulfillment. Now, you stand at the beginning of your new life, a life where you no longer have to push against the current, because you have finally learned how to navigate the waters of your own existence. The most important truth to carry forward is this: transformation is not an event that has an expiration date. It is not something you finish like a project and then set aside. It is a commitment you renew every single morning, with every breath, and with every decision you make. The new beginning you are experiencing today is not a one-time reset, it is the first day of an ongoing, lifelong practice of mastery. As you step away from these pages and back into the rhythm of your world, you might feel a temptation to retreat. The old habits, the old worries, and the old friends who are still stuck in the force paradigm may try to pull you back. They will appeal to your old identity, reminding you of the comfort of your previous constraints. This is the moment to remember, you cannot go back to who you were, because you now know too much. You have seen the mechanics behind the curtain. You know that you are not a victim of your circumstances, but the conscious creator of your experience. To return to the old way would be to live in a house you know is built on sand. Instead, commit yourself to the practice of the pivot. When you feel the familiar tighten of fear, or the frantic urge to control an outcome that belongs to the universe, recognize it immediately. Don't fight it, and don't indulge it. Just pivot. Return to your center. Remember that your power is not found in the external manipulation of events, but in the internal calibration of your state. You are the thermostat. You set the temperature. Sustainability is found in small, consistent victories. Do not aim for a life of perfect, frictionless ease. That is not the human experience. Aim for a life where you have the tools to handle the friction with poise. Sustainability is found in the kindness you show yourself when you falter. It is found in the gratitude you feel for the lessons hidden within the obstacles. It is found in the joy of the work itself, rather than in the dopamine hit of the final result. I want you to leave this book with one final thought. You have nothing to prove to the world, and you have nothing to hide from yourself. The forcing was always a defense mechanism designed to prove your worth to an audience that was never watching. Now, you are free. You are free to pursue your highest potential because you want to, not because you need to. You are free to love because you choose to, not because you are afraid of being alone. You are free to create because you have value to offer, not because you are trying to fill an internal void. This is the ultimate freedom. It is the peace of knowing that you are enough, exactly as you are, while simultaneously being excited about everything you have yet to become. Your journey does not end here. In fact, it is only now beginning to take its true shape. The wisdom you have internalized will continue to unfold as you apply it to the unique landscape of your life. Trust your intuition. It has been sharpened by this process. Trust your resilience. It has been tested by your growth. And most of all, trust your capacity to let life happen. When you stop fighting the tide, you realize that the tide was never your enemy, it was the very energy carrying you toward your destiny. Go forward with courage. Go forward with curiosity. And above all, go forward with the absolute certainty that you are guided, you are supported, and you are exactly where you need to be to begin the masterpiece of your future. Your new life is waiting, not in the distance, but right here, in this very moment. Breathe into it. Step into it. It is all yours. Chapter Summary. The eternal beginning, transformation is not a finite project, it is a permanent change in how you orient yourself to the world. The point of no return. Once you understand the mechanics of surrender, you cannot return to the force paradigm without recognizing it for the struggle it truly is. The practice of the pivot, use the skills you have learned, metacognition, somatic awareness, and identity shifting, whenever the old patterns attempt to resurface. Sustainability through self-kindness, true resilience is maintained through patience and self-compassion, not through perfectionism. The end of proof, you no longer need to prove your worth. You are free to pursue your goals from a place of genuine desire and authentic contribution. Trusting the tide, surrender is the realization that the forces of life are working in your favor. Your destiny